So our next thing, a really good super chat here from Kevin Raymond, who supered us and said, "Do you worry that pro Dragonflight sales could lead to free-to-play WoW?" And
Absolutely not.
There is a broader worry though of, do you worry that pro Dragonflight sales could maybe lead to less investment in WoW or things changing in World of Warcraft, right? Monetizing more deeply. How could they do that?
Yeah, so my thought on that is no asterisk. The asterisk being not yet, I think. Where
if 11.0 has problems, yes.
Yeah, where I think with the amount of investment they've put in, I think they're smart enough to go, well, we can't have one bump in the road isn't, unless Activision leadership are literally just like, priests and priestesses of the Line God, and they see the Line God go down and start throwing sacrifices onto the blood pile. They might be that kind, but I think if they're going to invest so much, I think they're smart enough to go, okay, we have to ride it out. We have to give some time for IP, especially because like Arclight Rumble is not yet, even though it was supposed to be out last year. So it's like if they're making a bet, and it's not a huge bet, and they also have the other mobile game that they haven't talked about at all, from like people have picked up from job listings and stuff.
I'm sure these will get multiple microtransaction sales.
Obviously, but the point is, I think they're like, okay, we haven't brought everything to bear just yet. So what's the first expansion with all of the weight of our developers? The one where we're allowed to market it with World of Warcraft is back, and it's full of reviews from like Dragonflight, and it's like you're on camera and they've clipped a bit of the video and you're just like, World of Warcraft's back, and they're like, look at this guy said now says good, come back please. There's orcs here now, I think, or there's Urel, etc.
Yeah, here's Urel, come play the expansion.
Yeah, or a Shara hoof joke or tentacle joke, whatever you want. You can throw this into marketing because the marketers are like weird enough they'll do that now. I think because they're kind of roughly in tune, except for the ones who made all the anti Facebook posts that were very strange. The ones that were all like taking comments where people were like rude about World of Warcraft and then making some directly related joke against them. You're like, that was a bit weird. But generally speaking, I think they'll like.
I do enjoy corporate brutality.
It wasn't brutality in a way that was like going like bringing everything to bear. It was just like, it's kind of pithy.
Yeah.
I was like,
My problem with those is that they weren't vicious enough. But that said, I'm also insane.
You definitely are.
So yeah,
definitely
I
are.
could just be insane.
Yeah, if 11.0 sucks, we'll have problems.
Yeah.
If it sucks, sorry, not if it sucks. If it does, if it sales and retention are down, then we have an issue.
Yeah.
But
I think what we've worked out right now is, everything, imagine it as a click funnel, basically. You've got multiple stages of the funnel, right? One of those is going to be like your impressions, like how many people see the new expansion, how many people hear about the new expansion. But once you get people through, a few bits of the funnel, it's then going to be, okay, when you actually get a user into the game, how do you retain it? Because like with EVE Online, with its This Is EVE campaign in 2014 that was humongously viral. There's a graph of like their free trials and just goes, and of course they all leave because it's EVE. It's really hard to get into. So they've got the most important thing for right now down, which is better retention.
Yeah.
Now that being said, it's easier to get better retention from a smaller audience when your game feels like maybe more targeted to them. So we'll still need to see how all of the way the game's designed currently actually does work to the largest of large audiences. I'm thinking about like WoD's initial audience or Legion's sustained and perhaps building audience. But yeah, what they basically need is a expansion concept that's super strong. I talk about this in the news that just published, but it's that idea of sometimes it's not how hard you row, it's the boat that you're in that matters. So I actually think that systems design-wise and stuff, this is a better expansion than Legion. But Legion was a concept that was more exciting. So even though Legion had its alt-friendliness issues, its spec-friendliness issues, the insanely bad legendary item system, and all the issues that Legion had. Also, I'd say patch 7.2 being kind of mid. The Broken Shore patch wasn't great for the world content. I remember all the talk of time gating back then too. But the thing that mattered, though, is like, even though Legion was kind of rife with issues, the concept of it was strong enough. And with BFA, you actually found a similar thing. BFA, like, sales and hype was really up because the concept was something that people were really quite on board for. It's only when it was sustained bad execution that happened. And then with Shadowlands, like, yes, Shadowlands had excellent sales, but you got to remember that's like, you know, peak pandemic times. Shadowlands stuff was coming out. Like, I remember that was back here. I think we were going into another lockdown or something. It was after that Eat Out to Help Out summer. And we'll always just know as that when Rishi bought us a few burgers.
Yeah.
Thanks, I guess. But, like, I think that was a contributing factor. I mean, come on. MMO's definitely going to do well in a pandemic when people aren't going outside. I mean, the whole industry swole. But
yeah, I mean, we actually saw that when it was, when we broke down the Lucky Bancho player census from FF14.
Yep.
And saw that around that, like, was it July or something, around that patch, the games players shot up and was like, I can't remember what the number was, but it was a massive explosion of players joining the game new and returning at the same time. You're like, oh yeah, that was peak MMO time. It's peak MMO time. And unfortunately, Blizzard kind of, you know.
So Shadowlands was able to get that principle and then greatly let all of those people down. And I think that is why we've had such, such a struggle. But it's also that Dragonflight as a concept was never going to do as well as in terms of initial sales and the way that it would spread via word of mouth. It's a slow spread based on good work, not a fast spread based on a very exciting concept. Because it's World of Warcraft. Let's dive deep into our dragon lore. Yeah, like that's maybe exciting to some of us here who care about all that stuff. But I mean, the people that you've got to get, it's like you got to get Preach, and you got to get Preach's, friends of friends of friends, and he called Thrall's weapon the Doombringer.
Yeah.
Right? So just being like, oh yeah, there's a bit of respect for the lore and there's some really nice, and by the way, he does actually like narrative games and stuff a lot.
Oh yeah.
Just taking the piss because there's a bunch of like the WoW audience who they maybe like deep RPGs somewhere else. They just don't give a shit about the story in WoW, but they want like the big concept to be cool and grand and exciting. And I think Dragonflight didn't have that. So that's why it all comes down to 11.0. As for the free to play thing, technically, WoW is free to play up to level 20.
I would advocate not free to play at all.
Yeah, I would advocate World of Warcraft being more free to play, as a way of getting people in. Maybe so. I would say what is there up to level 20. I think Blizzard should extend that. Blizzard should work out ways of making that like a better experience. And generally, they just need to make that new player experience better and better and better. I mean, right now they shove you straight into Battle for Azeroth, which. Like, they said that it's because they wanted to put you straight into a relatively modern campaign. But if you, you'll just be confused if you just fucking get thrown into Culturas.
Yeah, there's, to
but
be
they
fair.
do have this problem with everything.
Yeah, there's no way to not get confused during World of Warcraft. Like, what expansion do you start in where you're not like, what's any of this? What's going on? I think there's no answer that's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because you go to Shadowlands, you're like, what? What do you...
No, thankfully it doesn't take you there.
I'm in the realm of death? What's any of this?
Yeah.
BFA is about as good a starting point as any, I think. Just because...
I suppose, yeah,
that's the thing, right? It's shit, but all the other options are either older or worse. I go, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I think when the time comes, Dragonflight actually would be a pretty good starter campaign, purely because it immediately is taking you away into this adventure. You do stuff with a few characters, you come back.
Yeah, the only argument I'd have against that is that World of Warcraft is so bad at, and this is like fair because it's a choice of whether you do it or not. Everything they do is so based on these people, you remember this stuff. Whereas like they're not designed in a way to have a bit of relative like simple and normal catch up that's felt in the story. You drop into Dragonflight and it's like, who are the aspects? Like what? You're kind of expected to know most of this because it's not because it's like it's experienced by most players who care about the story as a linear experience, or they'll go and figure something else out. But in this case, like maybe they would need to rethink that for 11.0, where it's like, hey, can we have this? And they probably are thinking about this. because I'm sure they know BFA is a pretty mess starting experience. I assume they are going to have something which is, hey, here's the context in a way that you'll be able to understand it. Because it's like someone pointed out there, we definitely need a new, we definitely need a new player experience revamp. Because Excel's Reach is like Excel's Reach. It's not great, but it's perfectly fine. It's like, hey, here's a little slice of intro. It's just that it doesn't explain much about the world in any meaningful capacity. It does explain you some concepts.
It's quite generic soup. Like, I think Excel's Reach is like purposefully generic. And I think that in some ways hurts the new player experience because it's not like a starting area that's based on your race. That being said, some of those are really old and janky. So it's a bit tricky overall, but I think they need to make that free-to-play side of things a bit better to like optimize a part of their funnel. I think also they need to start running their game as a service a bit like how software as a service runs sometimes. So as an example, I think there needs to be 2 weeks of game time just like for free in your account.
Oh yeah, the fact that there's like not unless
the way that it's like buy the game, also buy game time. Like Blizz, you are like with doing that, you're running against one of the like number one things, which is the more decision points that exist within your sales flow, the lower your overall, the lower your conversion rate will be. Like this is online business 101. So they need it that you can just like, the game comes with 2 weeks. You don't have to think about another purchase. Maybe then make it comes with a free month if your friend refers you. And the refer a friend right now, it gives the referrer everything, but it needs to give the referee something.
Yeah, they needed something great.
Yeah, they just need to really start thinking about how they hack growth, because like I don't know, if they came out of like Y Combinator, they would be asking a lot of very different questions about how do we growth hack this game, how do we get more people in, how can we be like smart and agile and scrappy and try to run promotions. We saw some evidence of this. Remember they did the 30 days of game time when you buy the game promotion. They did the free weekend that I think included like high level, like just playing, the new stuff. I think it was playing Evoker and going into the first zone. Yep. They need to do more things like that. Just a whole bunch more. We'll see with the business model. I just think they need to get smarter and smarter and smarter, and they actually need to try. They need to understand that like they're not in the position of strength in one way. But they are in another way, and that the core thing that they're marketing is way better. So with that, they should feel confidence to actually try really hard and to do things that not just are tapping into their existing users, but actually can give them true growth.